Whenever you're ready, my friend.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another very interesting series on the Warrior Next Door podcast. My name is Ryan Fairfield. We have Tony Lupo here as always, each in our individual spaces, ready to provide some really interesting content for you guys. So, what we've got for you guys today is actually an interview we did via Zoom with a Rosie the Riveter. And I mean, and I'm when we say that, it's not just a colloquialism for a woman who worked in the war effort. No, she
Yeah.
really was a riveter.
Yep.
Tony brought this interview to us. We interviewed her just this past weekend when Tony was here in Oklahoma and we were doing some live recording. So, Tony, tell me how you got hooked up with Miss Betty Hayes.
Well, my neighbor, my friend, my fellow bicycle rider dude that I ride bikes with, Tim McAndrew, yeah, and his wife,
And friend of the
Quentin,
podcast.
and friend of the podcast. Yeah, someone who helped set up our merchandise store in the early
Yeah,
days was a big,
provided some great advice for us.
absolutely. I mean, he is a friend of the Warrior Next Door, a friend of Tony Lupo and Ryan, an awesome cyclist and just an all around great dude. And any rate, his wife Quentin, who I've gotten to know really well, obviously, and
She's
they
a
were
very
across
nice
the street.
person too.
She's a
Yep.
wonderful person. She you can't say she grew up in the Montrose area because she spent some time in Georgia, and then her parents and ended up moving to the Montrose area. But her parents live in Montrose. They spend a lot of time there, and I don't know the exact circumstances that allowed her to meet Betty Hayes, who is the Rosie the Riveter that we are going to feature in today's podcast. But somehow, when she visited Montrose a month or two ago, I don't know where she was at, but she ran into her daughter, Sherry, who you're going to hear on some of the clips that we're going to share with you, and Betty. And when they came back to Montrose, she Quentin, Tim's wife, said, I heard about Betty. She won the Woman of the Year award in 2025. That may have been how Quentin heard of her. She's completely legit. She just got back from this amazing ceremony in New Orleans for the Gary Sinise Foundation. She's 100 years old, and
She turned
she
101.
she turned 101 the day after we interviewed her. So Ryan
Yeah,
and
so
I
just Sunday.
just totally, yeah. So we're recording this on October 15th. And just the previous weekend, our families got together to hang out. So basically, Quentin gave me Sherry's number, which is her daughter, and Betty's number, which of course is the person we're featuring today, and said, I asked them if they'd be interested in being on your guys' podcast. And she said, yeah. So I thought the best way to do this was to see if we could schedule this when Ryan and I would be live together in the Green Barn in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we can kind of feed off each other for the interview. And that's what we have in store for you today is an actual riveter that you're going to hear where she worked and all that in subsequent clips. And the other reason this resonates with me, Ryan, I'll just add this one more thing before we have any other additional comments before we start the clips, is on my dad's side of the family, my grandmother was also named Betty. Her name was Betty Preer, or Betty Lupo Preer. Of course, the person we're interviewing today or featuring today is Betty Hayes. My grandmother, Betty Preer, was also a Rosie the Riveter at the Willow Run plant in outside of Detroit, Michigan, which was constructed by the Ford Company in the early days of World War II. And she worked on this assembly line. She was part of a workforce of 42,000 people at the peak of their operation. And that particular plant would turn out a B-24 by 1944, when they got all the bugs worked out. They were turning out a B-24 every 63 minutes, basically every hour, which is unfreaking believable to think about. One of the most complex pieces of machinery during World War II, outside of our aircraft carriers and battleships, that they were able to crap one of these out every hour. And now we get a chance to talk to Betty, because my grandma passed away years ago. I never had a chance to talk to her about this. And so this interview is really touching to me because I can live vicariously through another Betty a Betty Hayes, who's not my grandma, but experienced many of the things that my grandma did. So this is a real personal interview for me.
23 B-24s a day, essentially, is what
Yes.
your grandma was involved with. I mean, is that a squadron a day almost? I mean,
That's way more than a squadron. That might
that's
be a wing or
crazy.
a group. They like in June, they made, according to my research, they produced 500 bombers in 1 month. I mean,
Wow.
these are the
Wow.
sort of things. So, for the people listening to our
Mm.
podcast, if you do it sequentially, we actually have the top five Nazi blunders of World War II airing right now. And one of them has to do one of the blunders that Ryan, myself, and Ray Harris Jr., who is a friend of our show, and we're happy to have him because his podcast is amazing. The history of World War II. We talk about Hitler didn't really fully comprehend what he was getting into when he declared war in the United States. And this is just one plant with one type of bomber. Extrapolate that with machine guns, with tanks, mortars, battleships, aircraft carriers, and these women. And we're about to get into some clips. We're featuring one today. Played an absolutely critical role
It's
in
vital.
allowing us to outproduce every other army in the world combined during World War II.
Mm.
That's quite a statement.
It sure is. Let's go ahead and jump in. So for anybody who's watching this as a video, I just want to make a statement. You'll see the clips that are of Betty talking. You'll see Tony and I interviewing her, and then you see Tony and I now. So
Yeah.
there's four Tony and Ryan's or on the screen at any given point. If you're listening to the podcast, you're not going to notice that. But anyway, we'll just jump right in. Just want to explain that a bit and wonder what the heck's going on here. But let's just kick it off. And I think it starts off with us just kind of getting to know Betty here.
Yep. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up, and what was it like growing up then?
Well, my childhood, I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I was the oldest of six children, so I helped my mom a lot. And it was during the Depression, but it didn't seem like, I don't remember ever doing without. My dad was part-time on the Union Pacific Railroad, so we did have some income during that period of time. So I do remember that we did lose our house and we had to move to my grandmother's house. But other than that, I I went to school and I graduated from high school and I helped a lot with the younger children.
So Betty, whenever before you lost your home, were you living in town or were you living on a farm? Were you living in a rural community?
We were in town, Kansas City,
Okay.
Missouri.
In city. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. I was born and raised there, and so yeah, that's where I
So
grew up.
so
And I had, it was a time when we were safe. We could play out on the street. Or we lived on a low traffic, so we kids played soccer and stuff out in the street, all hockey stuff out in the street. We were safe. There wasn't any violence. We didn't have to worry about people bothering us. And yeah, that was walk to
it was
school by yourself.
it
Not
was it was a great time back then, I think. I mean, Tony and I were talking about this earlier. That was the time where people hung out and visited with each other, you
oh
know,
yeah,
and neighbors were neighbors and you spoke every night and you were friends, and we miss days like that.
that's true. And you watched each other's children. You kept an eye out on the neighborhood kids. Everybody kind of like the whole neighborhood. Everybody knew everybody's kids and where they were and what they were doing. You didn't dare do anything but wrong, or your mom would know it before you got home.
So even though it was the Great Depression, it sounded like it wasn't a terrible or disastrous experience for you. You guys got through it to some degree. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Did you always have enough food and clothes and those sorts of things, or do you remember times when those were in short supply?
Well, I remember that my grandma occasionally bought me a pair of shoes. But other than that, I don't remember. I never did without anything. My parents were there. I just, we just did not do without. They saw to it that we had what we needed.
Were you the oldest or youngest or middle child? Where were you amongst these six children?
I was the oldest.
You were the oldest. Okay, so you
Mhm.
were big sister then.
Yeah, I was big sister.
Do you remember where you were living or what you were doing when you heard about Pearl Harbor being attacked?
Oh yeah, I remember exactly. I remember I was in the kitchen and it was Sunday morning. We had this little radio that we kept on the fireplace in the living room. We always had it on in the mornings. And I remember President Roosevelt coming on and giving his infamous speech. We heard things, so we ran into the radio and listened to that. So yeah, I remember all that. Of course, I was in 41. I was about 16 years old.
What was the
So,
reaction from your family when this news hit? As you sat around the radio and listened, what was everyone's thoughts?
well, we were really shocked. Daddy was gone. Like I said, he worked for the railroad, so he was gone a lot. But Mama was there, and my aunt was there. And of course, we were all in shock, and we that's all we could find out was just listen what was coming through on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And once the announcement was made, why then we had additional information, additional news coming through, but it was very scarce. And yeah, but we didn't have anyone in our family of age to be in the service. Some of the guys had already been drafted,
Mm-hmm.
and a few of my friends was already in the military. But then the next best thing, they all wanted to go and join.
Were you were you working at the time when you were a 16-year-old girl hearing about this war that now we had to fight against the Japanese? I mean, what were you doing at this time?
I was going to school. I
Yeah, it makes
grad
sense. Yeah.
I graduated in 41.
Okay. So so
So
so
this is yeah. So I was working at Sears Roebuck
okay. So it
when I
sounded like was the depression still a thing in 1941 or was it easier for people to make money and get the things they needed?
it was easier. And then of course after the war started, we had ration cards, but there being six children, why and my mom and dad, why we did not suffer too much from the rationing because we had lots of ration books.
That's right.
So
And so what did you end up doing during the war? What was your role in the war effort?
well, after in 42, I got married and I went with my husband to Carthage, Missouri, where he was stationed. And then he was transferred to Kansas, Salina, Kansas, and I went out there. And from there, I went back home because he was shipped overseas.
Hmm.
And it was when I went back home and lived with Mama. And they needed people in the war efforts or women. They needed people. And so I entered an ad. I found out that they needed people to work at the bomber plant, the North American Aviation. And so I went and applied, and they paid much more than Sears. I was working at Sears at the time, but they paid much better than Sears, and they had a bigger need. So I went over there and applied, and they sent me to school. They accepted me and sent me to school, and to Riveter School, and I went about 3 weeks to that before I actually ever went over to the plant itself and started building B-25s.
She's going to talk more about the plant in the next clip, but I wanted to stop it here just to talk about two things. One, Ryan, it was really common for us when we have interviewed veterans, and all of whom would have lived through the Great Depression. Uh, Very few of them, many of them recognized that they were in a depression, that jobs were scarce, that money was tight, but very few of them talk like it was the end of the world, like it was the worst experience of their lives. In fact, it was more, I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, it feels like more of the people we talked to about the Great Depression remember that more fondly than negatively. Is that kind of what you remember as well as we've interviewed
Yeah.
some of these guys?
And why would that be? Why would they remember it more fondly?
The thing that I've heard them say, and you tell me if this is what you're thinking, is they kind of felt like they were all in it together.
Yeah.
And that
I think it brought everyone's family bonded together. I think it was a instrumental moment for the American family, for everyone to chip in and everyone to look out for each other, and the neighborhood to look out for each other.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I think that's probably part of it, or most of it.
That's important to know. And then the other thing that I want to talk about, because this is a good segue in the next clip, which we'll launch shortly. And I got to tell you, audience, this is really weird for me, and I know it is for Ryan, to watch us. Well, I'm on video right now, to watch us interview her, to actually see us, not just see the person being interviewed while we're behind the camera. We're going to have a YouTube version of this, and you'll see the weirdness in it. But at any rate, I digress.
So all those people out there that don't like it when we let the veteran talk, now you got us times two, right? Because we're talking during the interview with her, and we're talking now. So
this may absolutely kill our podcast. This may be the end of it right here. Oh my gosh.
Well, it was a good run, Tony.
It was a good run. We did the best we could. We ended with an amazing person. But at any rate, she's going to work at the North American plant in Kansas City. Ryan and I are going to have more to talk about that after the next clip. But she's going to make B-25s. And B-25 bombers were an American-made, obviously, twin-engine medium bomber. It became one of the most famous bombers in World War II. It was named after Brigadier General Billy Mitchell, who is seen by many to be kind of the father of the modern Air Force. In the interwar years, when there wasn't a lot of funding for military spending, and before we knew there'd be a World War II, this after World War I, Billy Mitchell was really an advocate for how much air power could play a role in winning the next war. So they named the bomber after him. I think one of the reasons why it's so well known or famous is I think a lot of people may have heard of the Doolittle raid, where shortly after Pearl Harbor was attacked, the USS Hornet and its carrier task group went to Japan and launched B-25s off the flight deck of a freaking aircraft carrier, which was not designed to do, and bombed Tokyo, and really shook up the Japanese. They had no idea that the capital city could be bombed in that way. It was a major propaganda coup for us. It was also effective as a ground attack. You wouldn't think of a bomber as a ground attack thing, right? This twin engine bomber, but this they would not only put numerous 50 caliber machine guns on it, but in select models, they added a 75 millimeter cannon. People, that's what they put in Sherman tanks.
That's crazy.
They put this in the nose, and people who flew those B-25s said that when that 75 millimeter cannon was fired, the airspeed would drop.
Oh, I'm sure.
it wouldn't be much, maybe 5-6 miles an hour, but the airspeed would drop. It slowed down the bomber from the recoil of having this in there. And it was really adaptable. It was used by many different air forces. It was an extremely successful design. And as a fact, over nearly 10,000 of these B-25s would be produced from two plants. We're going to hear more about the plant that she worked at. Ryan's got some information on it. I'm going to have some information on the number of women that participated in the workforce at the time. But I just want to stop here and say this was a plane she was built. I want to add one more thing. North American would also make another extremely successful plane during World War II, and that would be the P-51 Mustang. So North American, I totally had a badass run in World War II. Great company. So,
Ryan, real quick, I just want to jump in. So I'm curious, with that 75 millimeter cannon in the B-25. Basically, it sounds like the plane was, in a way, kind of built around this gun.
Yeah.
Right. kind of like the A-10 Warthog, the more modern version. Now, we've always thought the Warthog, which was called the Thunderbolt, was modeled after the P-47 Thunderbolt from World War II, which was also a flying gun platform of just craziness. But I wonder now, because, the Warthog actually looks more like a B-25 to me. Yeah. It has the twin ducted fan engines behind it.
Yeah.
The B-25 is a twin engine bomber with twin tails on it.
Yeah.
I just wonder if there is some sort of crossbreeding there in the P-47 and the B-25 into the A-10 Warthog.
Well, so it's interesting. So the A-10 Warthog honored the Thunderbolt. It was a Thunderbolt 2, which was the P-47 fighter. But in construction, in use, it was actually, like you said, actually more aligned with how the B-25 bomber was designed and used. That's a great observation. I hadn't thought of that before, but
I didn't realize they put a 75 millimeter cannon in it. That's what made me think of that. I mean, I knew that they packed a bunch of 50 cals in the nose. Yeah. And there's a lot of fantastic footage of gun camera footage in the Pacific Theater where they're strafing, ships in harbors and stuff like that. And then it's just mayhem with this thing. I mean, it's like, the gunships in Vietnam, that are shooting the Gatling guns out of the side. Dude, these things are all just packed to the hilt with guns.
If our audience hasn't seen the YouTube videos of that, you should. They would take these B-25s. They had the nose on the top. They had the twin 50 cals on the top turret. Those would point forward. They had the nose turret. Those would point forward. They had gun blisters on the side with 4 or 6 on each additional 50 cals on the front. And then some of these had the 75 millimeter cannon in the nose, and then they would drop bombs. So imagine several squadrons of these coming into,
they're fast. They're fast too.
Coming into one of these Japanese shore installations, and they come in there and they strafe the holy hell out of you. And then some of the famous footage, because they flew so low, is dropping the bombs with the parachutes on them to give the bombers time to get past the bomb before it blew up.
Because they're so low.
Plane. Exactly.
And they're coming in low and fast. Yeah.
Oh, these planes were so badass. And it's really cool that she had a chance to build these. So now in the next clip, she's going to talk about what it was like working in the plant.
So when you were going to school, I mean, they taught you to be a riveter. What other things were they teaching you? What do you remember about the training that you had?
They were just teaching us how to use the riveting guns and how to buck the bullets or buck the rivets. Basically, and what we were expected to do or not to do and how we were to dress. We had to wear headbands because we couldn't have any hair out because get caught in the drill, it'll pull the scalp out. And just basically what the rules were that we had to abide by to do this job.
You were literally the Rosie the Riveter. It sounds like you were the poster child for the poster we've all seen of a Rosie the Riveter with the headband on and the rivet gun and the plane in the background. And that has to be a pretty proud legacy that you've got right there.
Well, it was just a job. They needed help.
Yeah.
And so I was just doing what I could to help the effort. My husband was in the South Pacific at that time. And so that's what I did. We built B-25s and the bombers flew over Italy. B-25s were dropped the bombs over, basically. As I understand it, now this is something I've read since then, but I think that the B-25s were used basically to drop bombs in Italy.
So these were the twin engine bombers?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So with the people that they were hiring when you were being trained and working in the plant, how many of them were women? What percentage would you guess? Most of them?
Oh yeah. We, probably out of 50 people, we might have had one lead man. That was all. Out of 50 women, probably 50 to 1.
Wow. And so what city were these B-25s being built in? Was it Carthage?
No, it was in Kansas City, Kansas, right across the Missouri River from Kansas City, Missouri. I was living in Kansas City, Missouri at the time, but then the plant was just right across the river. And
what was the work like? Take us through what a typical day would have been for you in this plant.
well, I went to work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and when we got there, uh, we carpooled to get there, and because I didn't have a car, and so I had to run the bus, but we did carpool. When we got out of the car, we of course went in, and then when we went to go into the building, we took our lunches. We had to open our lunchbox, and there was security there, and every one of our lunch boxes was inspected when went in, and when we get out also. And we just went in and timed in. That's been a while ago, so I'm not real sure exactly what the routine was, but and then we went to our stations and started when the line started moving, and that's when we went to work.
So what was your station? What part of the bomber did you work on?
On the Up on where the fuselage, well, behind the engines,
Mm-hmm.
there's where it's attached to the plane.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rim, and that's where I worked. Was on that part.
Did you primarily do that every day, or did they move you around to do different things?
No, we basically did the same thing all the time.
Wow. How long were your shifts?
8 hours.
Did you work 7 days a week?
No, I think we were working 6 days at that time.
What was
They
the
one day off.
what was the what was the morale like in the plant? I mean, did you get along with the other workers? What was that like?
Oh, it was great. We all got along really well. We were all there for the same reason. We were making 95 cents an hour, which was really, really good money back then.
Good.
And yeah, the camaraderie was very good.
So I have a question. You mentioned, that they would inspect your lunchbox before and after your shift. Were there ever any incidents you recall of there being any, espionage, I guess, that could have taken place, people stealing things that were maybe technology?
It wasn't any espionage, but once in a while they'd catch somebody stealing something.
Hmm.
A small tool that might be in the bottom of the lunchbox or something like that.
Hmm.
But I didn't happen very often because we all knew we were going to be scrutinized very closely.
Sure.
Did-
Yeah.
have you ever seen a B-25 bomber before you started working in this plant?
No,
What were
no.
your thoughts when you went into the plant for the first time and you saw what you're going to do? What crossed your mind?
Well, I think it was really pretty astounding that to see all this that was going on because the work was in process when they took us through, and it was just a little overwhelming. But it was okay after we were there for a day or two.
So Betty, when you were doing your riveting, and you worked on that one, was that like the spar of the plane that you were working on there essentially?
Yes.
How long did you have per plane to do your work before it moved on? Did it just take you a minute, or was it have to get so many rivets popped in? Like, what was that like?
I I really don't remember that. I know that we had to do the whole rim, so
Okay.
it took us a while to do that. And there was two of us. One of us was riveting, and the other was bucking the rivets. And one was in the inside, and the other was on the outside. The one that was doing the bucking was inside.
Did you do both, or were you doing the riveting?
Yeah,
What was your part?
I did both.
Did both. Was it? I mean, how when you? I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know you're supporting a war effort, you're making a lot of money. Were there times where you just left work and you're just wiped out and you're just like, oh my God, how tired were you? How exhausting was it to maintain this pace, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't think it was very hard. I just, no, it wasn't. I never felt like I was being overworked. We worked hard, but uh, we knew what we were doing it for. And maybe that made a difference to us, was the fact that we were there doing something to help the boys overseas because they couldn't, and to get them home.
And because a lot of these women had been fighting overseas, that would have been a bit of a incentive for them on top of everything else that she mentioned. And really what I have, Ryan, is just kind of a high level overview of the number of women who participated during the war. And I think you got some cool stuff on the plan itself. But basically between 1940 and 1945, the women in the workforce grew by between 6.6 and 6.7 million women during the war years. That's an increase in the female labor force by almost 50%.
So it increased by that much?
It increased by that much. It increased by 50%. There was an additional 6.6 to 6.7 million women who joined on top of the women who were already working prior to the war. And the female share of the U.S. workforce, the entire U.S. workforce, rose from 25 to 27% in 1940 to almost 40% in 1945. So there was a huge increase in the number of women. And in fact, many of the women took jobs in manufacturing that included the aircraft industry, which is what Betty's talking about. And there, they made up about 65% of the workforce by 1945. So when we asked her, what was the makeup of the workforce like? Was a lot of women there? Yeah, well over half, 2/3 almost of the workforce was women in the aircraft industry. Other roles that they participated in included munition, shipbuilding, and also military service. We had a chance to interview Dorothy Gibbons on a series a few years ago, and she served in the military. I think in the Waves. Wasn't she part of the Navy?
That's right,
yeah.
the Navy Auxiliary.
That's it. Well, an additional 350,000 women served in the U.S. military in various roles as well. So the WACs, exactly. So really what my research showed is that in order for us to make the materiel that our men needed overseas, because so many of these men of fighting age who were prime workers were holding a rifle, and estimates range between 14 and 18 million of those were gone. They were mostly supplanted by these young women, and they did a fantastic job. And but I don't know much about the plant, Rhino. What did you find out about that?
So the plant that she worked at, Kansas City, Kansas, was actually known as the Fairfax plant, or in its military code was NAA-K. It was a key assembly site for the B-25s between December of 41 and August of 45, which is 3 years and essentially 8 or 9 months. The Kansas City Fairfax plant produced 6,608 B-25 bombers of varying models, like the B-25D and the B-25J. Now, the total number of B-25s built during the war I have is 9,816.
Yeah, my research shows just under 10,000, so I think we're aligned there.
So 2/3 of the B-25 bombers built during the war were built in that plant where she worked.
Amen.
So she likely, as we'll hear later, she'll talk about, a plane that she got to visit later in life that may very likely have been one she worked on. But let's see, the construction took just over a year to build the plant. And the production started soon after the U.S. ended the war. It was built adjacent to Fairfax Field Airport, allowing the completed aircraft to be instantly tested and flown directly out from there. Early production involved assembling sub-assemblies from Inglewood, California plant, but over time, Kansas City assumed nearly all the manufacturing duties for the plane. At peak, over 250 bombers were completed per month. The plant was awarded an Army Navy Code E for production excellence in October of 1944. And to meet labor demands, tens of thousands of workers were employed, including many women filling roles like Betty, traditionally held by men. Training programs and simplified assembly methods helped maintain production quality. Safety performance of the plant exceeded the national average. And after VJ Day, it was then turned over to General Motors, where it became an automobile manufacturing facility.
All right. America.
Yeah.
Love it.
So a couple more things I wanted to bring up that were kind of stepping aside from this. She mentioned bucking rivets.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I need to know what that is. So I've just looked this up using Chat GPT. It says to buck rivets means to form the second head of a rivet by hand or with a pneumatic tool during the aircraft construction. It's one half of the riveting process used to fasten together metal skin panels and structural components. It involves one person, or known as a jig, holds a rivet gun with a shaped tool called a rivet set against the factory head. The second person, the buck rivet operator, holds a buck bar, which is a heavy metal block, firmly against the other end of the rivet shank. And the rivet gun hammers rapidly, pushing the factory head inward. The bucking bar provides resistance on the opposite side, forcing the metal to deform and form a shop head on the other side, kind of mushrooming out. Mm-hmm. When it's done correctly, the rivet swells, fills the hole tightly, clamping the sheets together with great strength. Why does it matter? Because the rivets create a strong vibration-resistant joint. That's very important, essential for airframe integrity, and it's still widely used in aircraft manufacturing and restoration, particularly on aluminum skin planes like Cessnas, Pipers, and World War II planes.
And the type of rivets they used would have been what they called flush rivets. So on the surface, instead of having a rivet head or a bump or a knob sticking up like you see in old boilers or old warships that are riveted, these were designed to be flush so they'd be more aerodynamic. And I had a chance to do some riveting when I was younger on cars, on body panels. I can't imagine doing it every day, all day, all the time. And I don't know which would be more difficult, holding the bar on the back end of the rivet that allows it to deform and hold the panels in place, or being the person that's got the rivet gun, which is basically an air hammer. But yeah. I just know that, much props to anyone who does this, and especially all these, women during World War II who probably had very different ideas about what they would be doing in 1941, 42, 43. We're going to talk about that in a later clip. A lot of these women didn't think they'd be doing this.
Right. I have one more little sidebar here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I know we've taken a little bit of time here, but
right.
I got to talk about it now.
Yep.
So, how she was saying that they had to inspect their lunch boxes. Yeah. And people every once in a while might have a little tool in there or something like that. And it brought up in my mind, remember that song by Johnny Cash?
Oh yeah. One piece at a time.
One piece at a time. It came out in 1976. And it's actually like a funny song. And a lot of Johnny Cash songs were about a guy who worked on a Cadillac assembly line.
Yep.
And over the years, he'd steal parts from the factory little by little and hide it in his lunchbox.
Yep.
And he'd steal one piece at a time. And eventually, years later, built his own custom Cadillac made up of mismatched parts from Cadillac different model years.
Yeah.
And the famous line is, "I got it one piece at a time, and it didn't cost me a dime." And I'm just wondering if anybody ever thought about, I wonder if I could steal all these 300,000 parts for this plane and build my own B-25. That's what I'd be thinking about doing, but it might be kind of hard to steal a prop. In my
probably would, or a tail assembly,
or the radial engine, right.
But she did pique my interest in terms of what was stolen. Here you are in the middle of the war effort, and she said it was really rare. It didn't happen very often, but probably tools, I'd imagine. I don't know what else, but yeah, I mean, not smart, but that's that happened. And the other thing about the rivets, really quick, is there's what's the amazing thing about a rivet. People think that when you build a structure, you want to build it like firm, tight, can't move. Rivets actually allow the pieces that are riveted together to move a little bit, to actually have a little bit of slop, and that prevents stress from being concentrated and causing the material to crack or split. So still being used today, definitely used a lot more back then. And I don't know, must have been, I still think of being on the same station every day, 6 days a week. I know she had a very uplifting outlook about it, and that makes me have that much more respect for them, because I would have been bored out of my freaking brains.
And I love her humility about it. She, like all these World War II vets.
Yeah.
I was just doing my job. I didn't do anything special. I was just chipping in to help the war effort, and God bless her. It's just I love the selfless nature of what everyone pitched in and did back then,
Well, she would get some reward for some of the work that she did. And this next clip speaks to that.
This may seem like a crazy question, but a lot of people nowadays like to rebuild these World War II planes and use them as museum pieces, or to use them to fly and at air shows and everything. Have you ever been asked to come look at a rebuild and use your knowledge and expertise on what you've done to help the restoration effort of the plane?
That's an interesting question, because I do have a very interesting story about that. About 6 years ago, here in Montrose, we have a tribute to aviation every year at our airport. We bring a lot of the Army planes in, and old planes, new ones. And they brought a restored B-25 up from Arizona, where they had rebuilt it. And we found out, they checked, and it was commissioned in June of 44. And I was actually working on the line in June of 44. So there was probably a highly possibility that I worked on that exact plane. And they took me up in it.
Oh.
They asked me, the crew said, "You want to go for a ride?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Except I don't think I can get up there, because the ladder was like a 1x1 metal, for these were 18-year-old guys scampering up and down them. Exactly. And the entry was 20x20, maybe. I said, "I can't get up through there." They said, "We'll get you through." So yeah, they got me through, and I got up there, and they took me up, and we flew around Montrose over the mountains. I don't know if you've ever been here. We have beautiful mountains out here. They flew me over the mountains and over around town and back down. And that was quite an experience. Of course, those planes didn't have any insulation, and the skins was on the inside. You could see them, and it was quite a ride, and I really, really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. About how long ago did that occur?
About 6 years ago.
Tell them about signing that they had you sign.
Oh, and also on the bombardier doors that they had on that plane, they had replaced them with some kind of material. And they asked me to sign the bombardier doors. They had several people pilots that had been on that plane or who had worked on them, and asked me if I would sign that bombardier door. So to my knowledge, my signature is still on that door, on that B-25 that's down in Arizona.
How amazing is it to think, if someone had told you in June of 1944 that someday you're going to be in your 90s flying in one of these and signing a bomb bay door, you would have probably laughed him out of the room.
I would have, definitely. You gotta be nuts.
That is such an awesome story. It is.
What would be scary is if they said, "You want to go up in this plane that you probably built?" And she's like, "Nope." I ain't going up in this plane. I know what I was probably not in my right mind. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, that would be like, oh, well,
well, maybe we won't fly this thing either then.
Right. Yeah. No, what a cool story. I mean, what it all came full circle, obviously. It's so cool.
It totally was. I don't really have much to add to that, other than I wanted to share with our audience that she had a chance to literally go full circle in her 90s. So this is something I will add for our audience. You can't see the video. When we get this on YouTube, eventually you will. For someone who is going to turn 102 the next day, and by the time we recorded this right now, she's 102 right now. She looked to be in spectacular health.
And she looks great.
Totally. I'm not surprised at all. That was 6 years ago, so 94, that she was able to, with a little bit of nudging and prodding, being able to get in one of these B-25s. Now, I may have cut out this piece, Ryan, but you and I have had a chance to scamper around the B-25 in Pampa.
Oh, did you cut that out?
Yeah, I may have, but what was our experience there? I don't think it was this big, cushy living room experience, was it?
Well, first of all, yeah, this was whenever Tony and I did the Pampa interview project back in 2003. First of all, it was August in Pampa, Texas. It was 95 degrees outside. And what do Tony and I, they got a great B-25 on their lawn of this. It's one of the coolest things about this museum in Pampa, Texas is a B-25. Yep. And they had it opened up for the reunion so we could go up inside it. So what do? We climb up this thing and we could barely fit through the openings. And that's the first time we realized how little the guys were back then, you know? And it was 115 degrees inside the cockpit when we got in there.
And it didn't stop us at all. And in fact,
no,
I don't even remember the heat, and it was hot. I just remember being in a B-25. And the cool thing about the one they had there is it looked like it had just landed from like a mission in World War II. It still had that blue paint. I think there was a Navy version. So they had the blue paint on it.
It was a Navy version.
And it had that patina from sitting out in the sun. But at the same time, it looked fresh enough that it looked like you could just start up the engines and fly. It was a beautiful example.
They got that plane, as I understand it, as I recall, they got it from the Navy. The Navy said, okay, you can have it on display. I remember asking someone there about how much money would it take to restore it and getting into flying condition. They said about $100,000.
Oh, that's it.
And that was it. And they said, but the Navy told them,
don't do it.
If you try to do that, we're taking it back. I'd be like, I hate the idea, honestly, of a plane that close to being able to be restored and do what it's really meant to do, which is to fly around and give people goosebumps when they see it. I hate that it's sitting out in a yard, deteriorating, really. Yeah. I hate that. But that's what the Navy said. So that's what they got to do. And it's a really great museum piece there on the grounds of that museum.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So now on the next clip, we're going to talk more specifically about the Rosie the Riveter and her perception of that during the time when she was one.
So how long did you work at the plant? When did you start? And then when were your services terminated, and what'd that look like?
Let's see, I started in 43. I probably worked there about 10 months because my husband came home early. 10, maybe a little over a year, maybe about 13 months. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you exactly for sure. His old mind is, this computer doesn't always retrieve like the retrieve button's supposed to.
Right.
Oh, Betty, Ryan and I are both in our 50s. We're starting to feel a little bit of that retrieval process ourselves. We get it. We think you're doing pretty good, if you ask me. Before I ask the next question, when was the first time you heard the phrase or the term Rosie the Riveter?
That's a good question, because I'm not sure when that was.
Was it a wartime recruitment poster?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I think I hate to tell you because I'm not real sure when it was, when the poster was made, but it was maybe during that time or after, maybe a little bit afterwards.
Okay.
One of the things you mentioned, that's okay. Don't worry, Betty, you're doing great. One of the things you mentioned how tight the quarters were to go up.
So I did keep this in. Good.
In 2003, Tony and I were lucky enough to climb around inside of a B-25. That was 22 years ago. But one of the first things we noticed was how narrow everything was. We're a little wider now and heavier now than we were in 2003. But even then, we were noticing just how everything was made for guys that were much smaller than we were, at that
18-year-olds.
18-year-olds, right. And you crawl through that, that passageway to get up to the cockpit and everything. Yeah. And there just wasn't much room in those planes. And I empathize with you. I know exactly what you're talking about with that, and it was eye opening for us.
It was for me too.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the fellows that was helping us on it, he had been involved in restoring this plane, and he says, "Well, now don't worry, Betty." He says, "I'm going to push you up. I'll push you up out of your butt because he." But he said, "Don't worry about it. I'm a retired doctor." So it.
so he's a medical professional. It wasn't personal.
He knows how to push up on yeah.
Push up.
All right. So in truth, I didn't really know much about the whole Rosie the Riveter legend and how that started. And what I found from my research kind of surprised me, because some of it was very available during the war and some of it wasn't. And so here's the skinny. So the idea of the Rosie the Riveter, and I'm getting this from a common source, originated in a song written in 1942 by Red Evans and John Jacobs Loeb. Images of women workers were widespread in the media in formats such as government posters, and commercial advertising was heavily used by the government to encourage women to volunteer for wartime service. And in fact, there was a movie in 1944 where the subject of the movie was Rosie the Riveter. So there was some knowledge of this during the war. But the other thing that I learned is that the full adoption of this idea of Rosie the Riveter, as we know it today, really didn't happen until much, much, much later. So the very famous poster that everyone, I think, when they think of Rosie the Riveter, they probably think of this poster. It's a woman with a blue, basically coveralls on, rolling up her sleeves, making a muscle. She looks to the right at the camera or to the left. She's got a scarf on, and it says, "We can do it." And that has actually been really not just talking about the Rosie the River, but more than that. That poster and all the fame that goes with it happened much later. Now, the poster itself didn't happen much later, but its availability as an icon for the Rosie the River happened much later. So here's what it reads. It's called the Westinghouse poster. So in 1942, Pittsburgh artist Howard Miller was hired by the Westinghouse Company's War Production Coordinating Committee to create a series of posters for the war effort. And one of these posters became the famous "We Can Do It" image that I just described. An image that in later years would also be called Rosie the Riveter, although it had never been given that title during the war. It was never called that. It was just "We Can Do It." There was never Rosie the Riveter to associate that during the war. Miller is thought to have based his "We Can Do It" poster on a UPI wire service photograph taken of a young female war worker, widely and erroneously reported as a photo of a Michigan war worker named Geraldine Hoff, but more recent evidence indicates that the formerly misidentified photo was actually of a war worker, Naomi Parker. So we actually have a name for this person. She wasn't made up out of whole cloth. She came from an image that came out of the United Press International Service. It was taken at the Alameda Naval Air Station in California. The "We Can Do It" poster was displayed. Now, here's the critical part that I'm talking about, how this wasn't widely known. The "We Can Do It" poster was displayed only to Westinghouse employees in the Midwest during a 2-week period in February 1943. Then it disappeared for nearly 4 decades.
What? That's strange.
Yes, it is strange. During the war, the name Rosie was not associated with the image. And the purpose of the poster was not to recruit women workers, but to be motivational propaganda aimed at workers of both sexes already employed at the Westinghouse facility. It was only later, in the early 1980s, that the Miller poster was rediscovered and became famous, associated with feminism, and oftenly mistakenly called Rosie the Riveter. So what she said is absolutely correct. Yeah, there was a song written about Rosie the Riveter. There's even a movie about it during the war. It was a thing, but the power that poster would have towards empowering women to join the workforce
to be independent. That wouldn't happen until the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised by that.
You know, one of the things that she mentioned was about when she started working there. What she said was 1943, and she thought she worked there maybe about 13 months, and then her husband came home. When I got to looking at some of the stats for the plant when she was actually working there, so when she would have come aboard there, the plant was only making one aircraft per day. Okay, one B-25 per day. And after that, up until about the time she left, they reached their peak production, which was 7 to 8 B-25 bombers per day. And that was the highest sustained output of the B-25J models at that time. So she actually saw, from coming aboard till the end, her job go into more of a frenzy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe it's because they had more workers. I don't know, but I'm sure that she was being asked to do more faster, you know, as each month progressed. So the plant operated with 2 10-hour shifts per day, 6 days per week. And like we said earlier, the subassemblies were built simultaneously in other areas of the facility, allowing multiple aircraft to be on the line at once. Typically, 25 to 30 of the B-25s were in different stages of construction simultaneously within the plant. By 1944, the efficiency improvements and specialized jigs reduced the total labor per bomber to 4,500 man-hours, which was half of the effort required at the start of production.
That's an incredible uplift in efficiency.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, to be able to half or double your efficiency, that's insane.
At wartime peak, the Fairfax plant's daily output equaled nearly $900,000 worth of aircraft in 1940s dollars, which is $15 million in today's numbers. Each bomber contained over 160,000 parts and roughly 300,000 rivets installed by hand by a workforce of more than 20,000 Kansans and Missourians. Man. The achievement placed Kansas City among the most productive aircraft manufacturing centers of World War II.
Good old Midwest work ethic. What are you going to say, right? That's amazing. It's amazing. And she would leave the plant because her husband came home early from the war. And she talked to us about that. And that's actually the next clip. So what else do you, when you think back, because I want to ask you some more questions about your time outside of the factory. But when you think about your time in the factory, what other memories do you have of that stick out after all this time?
Oh, when I was in the factory?
Yeah, when you were doing this work, yeah.
People of different cultures. Like I said, we were most all women, but it would just make you just friendships, I think, was the most important thing at that time, because we were all there for the same reason. We all had our husbands or fiancés, whatever, were overseas or in service, and we were all helping out, bring them home. That was our basic purpose.
I think the other thing that I kind of wanted to ask you about that is when you left, you said that your husband came home. Could you talk us a little more about that period? What was going on in your life at that time?
Well, he came home. He had, they call it PTSD now, but they didn't call it that back then. Yeah. But he did have some problems, and they sent him home early. And so we just, when he came in, we just started living our life over again, or just starting to live, because he was in service when we got married. So actually, we'd never had a period of time that we were together before he went overseas. And so we've just a few months here and there. So we just started our married life and having our family.
What did your husband, what branch of the military did your husband serve in?
He was the Army medical.
Army, okay. And where in the South Pacific was he stationed to endure or to get some PTSD?
New Caledonia.
Okay.
But he did some Sometimes they left that island and they left there and they'd go and do some hand-to-hand combat, just leave for a day and come back, or for a few days and come back. And I think that's when it started bothering him.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I understand it, he never would talk about it. Very, very little. Once, maybe twice, he told me a little bit about it.
And so what was your life like after that? What did you and your husband do? Did you guys stay in that area? Did you move? Well, yeah, ended up in Montrose somehow, but what happened after that?
Yeah, we lived there. We bought a house there, and we started raising we had our two boys, and then later we had a daughter. But our first son was born in 1945, about a year after he got back. He worked for the post office mail service. And we just lived a pretty normal life back then. I was mom and took care of the house and whatever else needed to do, and spent time with my mom when I could. And
when you heard about Pearl Harbor being attacked, did you have any notion at that time that you would end up holding a rivet gun a year or two later, building bombers? Was that even a possibility for women to do back then?
No, we worked in places like Sears or the telephone company, or we didn't do that kind of thing at all. It would just beyond our imagination to go to where we would handle tools. We just didn't do.
What do you think with all these women that typically would not have worked in these jobs, and now they had to, and they did a fantastic job? What impact do you think that had on women in the workforce after the war?
Well, I think that some women were not satisfied to stay home. They liked that money. And then, of course, the boys, when they came home, a lot of them had problems, and a lot of marriages did not last. And the women had experienced some freedom that they didn't have before, because most of us had just left home and gone into doing this. And so a lot of them, there was discontent. Yeah, that's about the best way to explain it.
How did it affect you personally? What did that experience during the wartime? How did that change you as a person?
You mean at Riveter?
Yeah, so you're working in a factory, you're working at bombers, a war going on, your husband's overseas, you don't know if he's going to live or not. I mean, did that have any impact on how you lived your life after the war?
I don't think so. I think I just kind of took it. Whatever was thrown at me, I just took it. It didn't really bother me that much. Of course, him being gone bothered me, but after he came back and we set up our household, and we had a good life. Yeah.
Were you and your husband high school sweethearts before you got married? How long did you know him?
No, we met through friends, and we probably saw each other 4 or 5 times before we got married, but that was the way things were back then. The guys was going overseas, they wanted to get married. If you got married, you thought you was in love.
I like how you put that. so
and then somebody to come back to.
Yeah,
sure, of course. Yeah.
And so that was just the thinking in those days.
Very.
And but like I said, you thought you were in love.
You thought you were in love.
I thought
4 or 5 dates and they got married. Most people aren't getting married till their 30s now, and they use dating apps to date like 90 different partners, and it's just so different. But one of the things that she mentioned that I kind of want to talk a bit more about is she said that a lot of the men that came home, we're broken, we're not always right, and that there was a lot of turmoil
in these marriages. It was not always happily ever after. And it reminded me of a story that you said in an early interview that we conducted about a movie that you watched that kind of highlighted this. I thought maybe you could kind of share that a little bit.
Yeah, there was a movie that came out in 1946 called The Best Years of Our Lives. And, at first you think, oh, it sounds like the daytime soap opera, Days of Our
Hallmark
Lives.
Channel.
No, right. No, it's a really good movie. I started watching it one day thinking, so I read about it. It's about 3 different guys that went off to war, each of very different backgrounds, and they all come back home on the same plane together. Just because of that Operation Magic Carpet, they're all coming back to the U.S. and trying to jump off at their respective airports and assimilate. And one guy is in the Army, good looking guy, movie star, good looks. He is on his way. When he's in the Army, he's got authority, he's doing great and that sort of thing. Then he comes home and you realize his life is nothing like you thought he was up to that point in the movie. You thought this guy's like a Cary Grant.
Mm-hmm.
When he comes home, he goes to visit his mom and dad's house. They don't even carry his back. They live in a shanty underneath a bridge in New York City. And he comes from an extremely poor background. He had a wife. He goes to ask, where's Julianne at? Oh, I don't know if she's down at the such and such, whatever. As far as we know, we haven't seen her in 2 months, and he goes looking for her and she's left him essentially.
Yeah.
So he's trying to find a job and he ends up having to work at a perfume counter at a department store. A guy that just jumped out of the military fighting a war. And all he hears about is jobs are scarce. Got all these guys coming back. You better get a job. You better get a job. So he got a job doing that. And the whole rest of the movie is him trying to figure out what just happened in those last 3 years. And look at how different the America is now. I mean, you've got women who have gone out and become more independent. I mean, there's cultural change. I mean, aside from the calamity and the bloodshed that happened over in Europe and Japan and the Pacific, there was a wholesale change in the values in the U.S. top to bottom. These guys coming back damaged from the war mentally and physically. One of the other guys in the movie lost both of his hands to a grenade, and he comes back home to his rural, farm community, to his fiance, who wasn't quite ready for him to come home with hooks for hands.
Yeah.
And the topic goes, well, how are you gonna, on your wedding night, how is that gonna work?
Yeah.
And then you see the girl in the background kind of like slink back, like, oh, like she had, and it's really powerful stuff. You don't think that they would broach those subjects in 1946. 1946 is when It's a Wonderful Life came out, And so anyway, I recommend that it's a great movie because they're using footage of all these planes in boneyards, the surplus of bombers. And the guy who is the soldier who comes back and his family doesn't really care that he's back and he works the perfume counter, finally gets a job cutting up the very bombers that he served in. And it's just an ironic movie because you look at this, you're like, how crazy, and it took a while for America to assimilate all these guys and to deal with all this. So anyway, yeah, great point though, Tony. And this is a great point. This is a great thing she brought up. It's her own little version of that happened.
That's exactly correct. And when she talked about some of the turmoil that happened when these families, these people that they barely knew and got married and then came back home, and she mentioned some of them stayed together, some of them didn't. It immediately made me think about that movie and your comments about it.
So, both parties likely changed.
Absolutely.
The woman, the wife and the husband likely changed. And if you didn't know them very well before you left for war, think about how hard it would be to ride that dragon when you come back.
Amen. If you didn't have the men coming back, a lot of them would have had a degree of trauma, and that sort of reintroduction to society would not have made it any better for a lot of men. So really what I wanted to make sure we talked about here is, one, it's awesome hearing Betty's experience, but she triggered some memories that I have of other interviews we've conducted where people came home and there was this idea that everyone came home and everyone's waiting for him and he had a surprise party and his beautiful girlfriend was waiting to get married is not universal to what most people experience. It was,
but what's
diverse.
Interesting is it seems like, and maybe this was by design by the guys who interviewed, but it seems like for the most part, they did come home and marry their sweetheart, and that's who they were with until they died. But maybe
well, they did and they didn't. I think that movie showed that. I mean, there was a lot of men, and you can read like Band of Brothers where they focus on individuals coming home as opposed to books that speak about big armies coming through. And when a lot of them come home, they talk about the turmoil they face. Like Nixon from Band of Brothers came home to help run his father's business and struggled. Right. I mean, whereas Dick Winters came home and he did marry his sweetheart and they did live happily ever after. And I just think that the truth is better than fiction. And the truth is we had this huge war, and you said it best. Both parties changed during this war. It wasn't just the men who fought. It was also the women who were here during the war effort, and they underwent their own set of stress and changes as well. And it was, let's just call it this, Ryan. Let's just agree to call it was a very large adjustment.
Yeah.
It was an adjustment. It wasn't just happily ever after. For a lot of them, it was, and it's great. But even the happily ever after ones had to make adjustments for things. I don't know. I just want to talk and kind of kick that around, but because a lot of people interview the guys, right? We don't interview the women, and now we got a woman who really literally worked until her husband came home and then had that experience and shared it with us. And I think it's great. Okay, we only got 2 clips left. The next one, as I mentioned in the Rosie the Riveter research that I did, they really wouldn't be fully recognized and honored until the 80s and 90s, and some much later. And this is one of a couple of clips where Betty talks about that effect for her.
So how did you end up in Montrose, Colorado?
Oh, that's a long story.
All right, I got some time.
Well, my brother lived up here close to Montrose, and he was 4 years younger than myself. So about 14 years ago, he said, I had lost my second husband, and he was single. And he said, Beth, why don't we just move to Montrose? And he said, we'll grow old together.
Oh.
So that's how I happened to come to Montrose, but I've only been here 12 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're, in a grand scheme of things, given that you've been around for a little over a century, you've only been in Montrose for a relatively short time then.
That's true, yes. I lived...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Before that, I lived in Far, Texas. After we retired, we were square dancers, my second husband and myself.
Oh my gosh, really?
Square dancers. So we went down to the Rio Grande Valley, which was the square dance capital of the state. And I lived down there 25 years.
Oh,
and so
that might explain the shirt then. That looks like something you could wear square dancing.
Oh, it might be, yeah.
Nice denim
that
shirt.
Was many years ago. Though square dancing is not on my schedule these days.
When was the last time you square danced?
Oh, probably. My husband's been gone about 30 years ago.
Yeah. So I have a question. So, looking back on your service in the war and the role that you had, at what point did you realize, wow, this Rosie the Riveter title, it was kind of a big deal. There's a lot of women that stepped up like you did and worked in the war effort and put in your blood, sweat, and tears on this. At what point did you realize, okay, this is a pretty cool thing that I was a part of?
That hasn't been very long ago. I never felt like it was really that much until they started pushing this, all this Rosie the Riveter stuff. I just felt like it was a phase of my life, a part of my life, and I had moved on from it. So it hasn't been too long that I really realized that it was something that was really important, and it did have an effect on my life and other people's lives.
Do you happen to have any photos of you working with your headband on, your scarf on your head, and oh my gosh, do you have
I'll
a
say-
photo?
I have
Okay.
a photo that was that my mom took of me when I was getting ready to go to work,
Oh,
Oh my
yes.
gosh,
and
yes.
she took a picture of me.
Oh, look at this. All right.
That is awesome.
You're beautiful.
Look at that.
18 years old then.
Oh
My
my
goodness.
gosh.
So are those overalls that you have on there?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, and I see this the headband, the bandana around your head there. I think I can see. And look at that. Yeah, the "We Did It" picture down in the corner. That's the picture that's the iconic, like it almost looks like a war poster, you know?
Yeah, it is.
So is it just me, or do your arms look a little muscular from doing all that riveting?
It could have been.
Yes.
I bet it was.
We did.
How heavy was the rivet gun?
Oh, I don't know, about 5 pounds maybe.
Okay.
But it's probably just more of the repetition of just having to do that every day for 8 hours, right?
Yes.
Do you think that the fact that, the women in the United States, that the way they kind of stepped up and did that work and really allowed the war effort to be won by providing material, do you think that changed women's thought about what they were expected to do when they got older? Do you think it allowed more women to consider, like, I'm going to go to college, or I'm, want to continue to work even if I have kids or don't have kids? Do you think it helped with that?
Yes, it did. It had a big bearing on it. The women had previously just stayed in their home. All of a sudden they were going out and they were making money and they were doing what they wanted to do. And yeah, women were more encouraged then to go back to work after the wars, wherever there was jobs available. And like you say, go to college. Some of them went to college. And yeah, I think, yeah, that's the way it was. It was just women just had different ideas about themselves. Well, we could do it. That was our motto, and we just felt like if we could do that, we could do something else too. We weren't limited to working in war plants.
Right.
And here we are in 2025, and there are more women enrolled in college than men.
Is that right?
That's right. How interesting is that you've finally seen that shift of women becoming more independent? We think it's great. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us that we haven't had a chance to ask you about in this interview?
One thing I want to show you, Tony.
Yeah. What is that? I can
The
see.
Congressional Medal of Honor.
Holy cow. So, okay, you got to tell us a little about how you got that.
Huh?
It's a blanket
It's a
Medal of
blanket.
Honor for all Rosie the
Roses.
Riveters.
Oh, so how did you receive that? Tell us the story behind it.
Well, the Congress in March 21, let's see, this is 25, 23, I believe, passed a law that this was to be given to Rosie the Riveters. And at that time, all women who worked in the war efforts were granted the title of Rosie the Riveters. They didn't have to actually be a riveter. They worked in the war effort.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes your story so special, is when I think Rosie the Riveter, I think of all the women who did roles that were traditionally held by men to produce the material to fight this war. And the fact that the name for that whole group of women was Rosie the Riveter, and you were a riveter, makes this interview really special to me, that we had a chance to talk to someone who actually held the rivet gun. Yeah, that was pretty sensational when they pulled out that big, beautiful medal. And I looked it up, and it is, all this did happen recently. On December 3rd of 2020, during the heart of COVID, the Congress awarded a Congressional Gold Medal, is what she received, to all the women who served as Rosie the Riveters during World War II. It's the highest civilian honor that was presented collectively to millions of women who worked in defense, manufacturing, and other support roles during the war. It was symbolically accepted at the time in 2020 by a 98-year-old former Riveter, May Creer, on behalf of all Rosie the Riveters. And there's been a number of commemoration events and personal presentations that have happened since then, including places in like October 13th on 2025. Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski presented a Congressional Gold Medal to a 98-year-old Collinsville, Illinois resident, Betty Wrigley. Betty was a popular name back then. That's my grandma's name too.
Right.
At any rate, it's incredible. One of these commemorative events, excuse me, happened in March of this year at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. They hosted a, quote, Rosie the Riveter Congressional Gold Medal commemoration. And it happened on March 21st, 2025, to honor these women. And guess who was in attendance for that?
I was just going to say, that was what she was just talking about, wasn't it? Yeah, that's amazing.
She sure was. Do we want to play our last clip and let our listeners hear her experience doing that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So, I think, I don't know if it's Sherry or Jim mentioned something about you being honored by the Gary Sinise Foundation relatively recently. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, in March.
And so what could you tell us about that?
In New Orleans, he had a weekend that there were 18 of us from across the country, Rosies, that were there, they and their sponsors. And we went to New Orleans. We went to the World War II Memorial Museum there, which is an awesome museum. I don't know if you've been there or not, but it's an awesome. And we were there 4 days. They flew us down and they gave us, and we were honored. They honored us there, and we had quite a long evening on a Saturday when we were all honored, because we were honored individually. And it was a great weekend.
Did you get a chance to meet Gary Sinise?
No, he wasn't there. He had previously had an engagement with the veterans group somewhere else.
Did they allow like Jim or Sherry or someone from your family to travel with you?
The Sherry. Yeah, that's Sherry.
Good. So you could share that with your family then.
Yes.
That sounds like quite an honor. I know Gary Sinise is highly recognized for the work that he does with veterans and whatnot, him being a veteran himself. I thought that was pretty cool. So I asked you if there's anything else you haven't shared with us, and you were holding out on the medal. So I'm going to ask again, is there anything else that we haven't covered in this interview that we should know about?
Tell him about the two girls.
Oh, it was something very interesting. Yes, while we were there, we had two high school senior girls from a Catholic school there. They came over and they shadowed us the whole day, spent the whole day with us, just because they were taking history and they wanted to learn about the Rosies. So the school had sent them over for the day.
What an amazing opportunity for them.
Oh, yeah.
To shadow your group and learn firsthand from you guys what it meant to be in that role.
We each had two girls.
Oh, you each had two girls.
Yeah,
I understand.
Two girls that were, or two students. I don't think anybody had boys. I think they were all girls.
Okay.
So that was an interesting part of the honor that we got to do. Mm-hmm. And it was great. It was really, really a good thing, a good weekend.
What are you going to do for your birthday tomorrow?
I'm not going to do much of anything tomorrow. last year I had 3 birthday parties, and 2 of them had over 150 people.
Oh my gosh.
And so I said, let's just have a quiet birthday this year. So Jim, my son, flew in from Sequim, Washington. So it'll be he and my daughter Sherry, and we'll go out for dinner.
Sounds
and
awesome.
That's enough for me.
Do you have a favorite restaurant? Do you have a favorite place you like to go?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. You're not gonna say? Is it a secret?
No, it's
don't lean up.
It's Ted's Steakhouse
Okay.
Ted's Steakhouse. Okay.
in Montrose.
Are you a filet mignon person, or what's your cut of steak that you like?
Oh gosh,
Kansas City.
I don't know.
I hear somebody whispering back there.
Kansas City Strip.
Yeah.
Kansas City Strip. Hey, that's a good cut right there. Kansas City. It makes sense. That's where she's from, right?
So I live in, right now we're recording this in the same room, believe it or not. We just have different camera angles in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But I live in Denver. I make it through Montrose a couple of times a year. And you can bet that I'm going to stop at Ted's Steakhouse the next time I roll in there.
And get the Kansas City Strip.
You have to stop in and see us the next time you're here.
I was gonna ask you that, but I didn't want you to think I was being creepy or anything. But I sure would like to meet you. So
invite yourself over, Tony.
Now, Tony, last year during 2024, she was one of the women of distinction, and she got the top woman of distinction of the year.
Woman of the Year for Montrose.
For Montrose.
Wow.
that sounds awesome. Maybe that may have been where Quentin heard about you. I just know that somehow Sherry, she got your number, she got Betty's number, and she said you got to call them up. And I'm so glad I did. Betty, what do you think is the secret to a long life? How have you been able to live longer than most of us can ever hope to imagine, and do it in a fashion where you look fantastic? You don't look like you're going to be 101 years old. What is it, like a shot of gin every night? What is the secret?
I had the Lord walking with me every day.
Okay.
Hey, there you go. That's great right there.
That's good medicine. I can't argue with that.
Well, I want to say that I want to be one of the first, and I might get Tony to help me here.
Yep.
We want to sing you happy birthday. Okay. And we want to do, want to be one of the first couple people to sing you happy birthday before your birthday tomorrow. It's not very often Tony and I get to sing happy birthday to a Rosie the Riveter and a World War II veteran to boot. So ready?
One, two, three. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, we're horrible.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Betty. Happy birthday to you. And that's it. That is our last clip. That is our mic drop moment. Not a mic drop moment because of what we did was so amazing, but because they gave us the hook and yanked us off the stage for singing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you guys are done. Right. We just lost any spot. Well, we don't have sponsors for good reason, but
not going to get them now. That's for sure. So at any rate, I mean, I will be, I do go to Montrose a couple times a year. I will try to stop in there, and I won't try, I will when I go through, to look her up and see what's going on.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
And I, not only do I appreciate being able to interview her with you, Ryan, live at the same place. When we had our family had a chance to visit your family last week, which was amazing. But I also want to thank, Quentin McAndrew, my neighbor's wife. Thank you for hooking us up with Betty and Sherry and Jim. Her son was there, as she mentioned. He flew in from Washington. Just a really cool interview from someone who's been there and done that. It's kind of a shame that a lot of them weren't recognized until very, very recently.
Well, that was one of the comments I was going to make, is why did it take so long? I mean, I guess I don't understand, how you can go this long, nearly, 80 years before you can recognize these groups of people that were instrumental in what came out of that war. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's it. I couldn't agree 100%. I agree 100% with you. The other thing is, speaking of the McAndrews house, they have on their refrigerator a picture of one of their daughters dressed up as that Westinghouse poster of "We Can Do It" with her bandana on. It's her daughter who's being the model in that. And I saw that and I thought that was really cool. And now we know, and I hope our audience knows, a lot more about the source of that Westinghouse poster. It was only displayed in the Westinghouse factory for a couple of weeks. It wasn't dug up till the 1980s, and now it is a cultural icon. And we had a chance to interview one of the women behind this huge cultural icon, this movement that women have had that really accelerated after the war towards being able to have access to different types of careers than what they had before. So, and I know you have a daughter, Lauren, and I know you're thankful that she's able to do whatever she wants to do without being hindered by it. So we all benefit. It's all good.
We all do. That's very true. Well said.
All right. Well, that's all I got, Rhino. I think we'll go ahead and sign out. And one last thing. Sherry sent me a bunch of photos from
cool.
One, of course, is of her of her mom that her grandmother took of Betty before she's going to work, so people can see that photo, and some from the Gary Sinise event and a few others. So when we drop this episode, I'll make sure that we put on our website. I'll send them to you, Ryan, so you can put them on our Facebook page, and we invite our audience to check them out and enjoy them.
Sounds great. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks again, everybody, for downloading our podcast and supporting us. We're gonna have some really great stuff coming up. In the next year, we got lots of good ideas, lots of cool stuff happening. Anyway, we'll just drop it here. My name is Ryan Fairfield,
and I'm Tony Lupo,
and we will catch you next time.
All right. It never makes it through, does it?
It never does. No.
All right. I'll go stop recording.